So when I'm writing prayers on a pasanka that is intended to be a gift to the land, I want to be conscious of the worldview that I'm writing that prayer from, and conscious also that um, I don't know necessarily what's best for that piece of land. Just like I don't know what's best for another person, I can wish them well. I can hope that they have well-being in their lives. But I cannot be the one to decide what well-being looks like for another person. They need to decide what that looks like for them. Same thing with the land. I don't necessarily know what the best thing is for the land. I can intend protection, I can intend fertility, I can intend well-being, but I cannot define it for the land. And that might sound a little bit controversial because, a lot of people are very much invested in protecting the environment. I'm one of those. But I'm also aware that unless there is a long, long relationship with a particular piece of land, generations long, I cannot just simply walk in and impose my picture of what well-being for that piece of land should look like. It would be built up over years of relationship, generations of relationship with a piece of land. So I try and be open-ended in my prayer, without being impositional of my own biases and my own perspective. And a lot of what I do when I write these prayers is actually acknowledgement of what I've observed in whatever short length of time I have with that piece of land. For example, this particular pasanka is going to be gifted to a piece of land where I've only spent a very short time, relatively speaking, a few days. The last time I was there, there was a snowstorm, and I observed a deer who took shelter by sitting between these two sort of either really large bushes or smallish trees. And as it sat there with the wind sort of blowing the snow going, almost horizontal, and the snow was coming down really heavy, it was just simply sitting in between these two in a confined space, these two bushes or trees, and the snow was accumulating on its head and on its back. It was sitting with its legs tucked in, kind of chewing its cud, and just being peaceful in the midst of this huge snowstorm. And so I'm depicting on my prayer inside the yoni. Show you this way. The winds that were blowing, which are on either side. Deers. So this is a deer skull, this is a deer skull. This is the yoni, which for me represents the Great Mother. And then also depicting a symbol that is associated with Mother Earth, a form of Mother Earth called Mokash. And here, this form of it is showing open, fertile fields. So intending or praying for fertility for the land without me necessarily defining what that looks like. I haven't decided what the rest of the prasanka will have. Usually I do a duplicate of this on the other side or some version of it. And then on the other unwritten portions, I'll put in some other symbols that represent part of the prayer, whether it's a prayer for well-being or a prayer for protection or something like that. Yet, I do not want to impose my limited ideas. I have a very short relationship with this piece of land. There's something really important for us to acknowledge, which is the relationships that the original peoples of the land had with the land. Those who were made of that land hold a different picture, built of many, many hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the disconnect that has been perpetrated to the peoples who belong to those lands, to the lands here, to the lands, this is a worldwide thing. The disconnect that has been perpetrated upon them means that we have lost a link in a chain of knowledge and a link in a chain of relationship. And we cannot be so short-sighted and egotistical to think that that link is insignificant. It is huge. That disconnect is huge. And so learning to step aside and allow for the reconnection without imposition of limited viewpoints is so very vital to the well-being, not just of the land, but of all communities who share that land, who are connected to that land, and also all individuals. There's an important teaching that was shared with me back in 1993 when I was doing my second degree in university, the second time I went back. I was doing work, studying. At the time, there was no environmental degrees in the university that I was at. This was pre having one of those kinds of departments. So I was doing something called integrated sciences, where you could basically design your own studies if you made sure you got all the necessary credits. And so I chose to study the intersection between Western science and traditional knowledges. And to make a very long story short, when I was at the university, I had the opportunity to sit regularly with an elder who was the elder in residence at the time. And his name was Wilfred Pelletier. And so as I sat with him, he was teaching me not only the ways to approach working with an elder, having to school me, but he was also posing many different kinds of questions for me to sit with, me as a very young person, to sit with, that were profound and profoundly shaped my life from that point forward. And one of the things that he gave as a teaching was that the land, the community, and the individual are one. And where there's an imbalance, let's say that there's an imbalance to something in the land, there's an illness in the land, the community is also ill, and individuals also suffer illness. And likewise, if somebody if an individual is experiencing some sort of imbalance, the community is also imbalanced, as is the land. They are all interconnected, interwoven, and essentially, I don't know how else to say one, unified. That teaching is so very vital to us today, so extremely vital to us today. And so when we think about lost links of connectivity and relationality, and the importance to allow for those to be revived, reconnected, we can see that all of our health, all of our well-being absolutely rely on that reconnection. And it's not for us to define what that looks like for another person or another set of peoples. It is for us to support and step out of the way, doing both, I guess, at the same time. Stepping out of the way, allowing other people to define what that looks like, support in what ways we can, in what ways we are asked, and recognize that there are no small actions. Writing a prayer on an egg is not a small action. It is me working within the cultural lines that are a part of my own ancestry. It is me taking care of my relationship to land and doing my work to both uncover my own cultural practices and my own connections to those practices, to listen to my own heart, my own blood and bone memories, to be in an integral relationship with the lands and an integral relationship with the knowledges that I either uncover, revive, or carry. And that integrity and that relationality naturally lead us to understanding the importance and the depth of the relationships that pre-existed my being here. That if you truly, truly, deeply care about the environment, the land, you naturally will then care about the peoples who belong to the land and your relationship to place and to them. That's what this means.